Hello ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about Le Mans Ultimate because I've actually played it. It's a game I've been quite critical of, so you may wonder why I bothered spending 400 of my hard-earned Monopoly money on this. However, I've never doubted that the gameplay would be at least decent. My main issues have been all the shenanigans surrounding the game. Because of this, I struggled with how to format this video. I want to give the game a fair chance without considering all the silliness around it. So I've decided to split the video into two. First I'll cover the game's positives and negatives, and then I'll quickly go through the controversies at the end. Just a disclaimer before we begin, this is my first impression of the game, based on a limited number of hours playing it. Since this is an early access title, my opinions are subject to change as development progresses. I also want to mention that I have biases regarding how the publisher has operated with this game, but I'll try to keep that out of the gameplay section of the video. This is an early access title and you should not buy it unless you want to support the developers and follow the game's development. But with that said, let's get into the video. Released on February 20th, 2024, Le Mans Ultimate is the officially licensed World Endurance Championship video game. Developed by Studio 397, the team behind rFactor 2, and published by Motorsport Games. As I start the game, the menus give me the options of Co-op and Race Week. I don't have any friends, so I of course choose Race Week. This prompts me to select a track from the 7 featured in the 2023 WEC season. Then I must choose a vehicle, and we have all three classes available: the Le Mans Hypercars, LMP2 and GTE. Lastly, I can adjust the race settings if I want to, and setting up a race is a very smooth process, which is good. The menus are also very user-friendly, which wasn't always the case for Studio 397 products. But as I got into the race, I encountered some issues with my wheel, which turned out to have nothing to do with Le Mans Ultimate. But while I was tinkering with the control settings, the game froze completely, so that's not great. After performing some magic on my computer to get it to recognize the wheel, it instantly popped up in LMU without any issues. So once again I loaded up Monza and the golden Porsche of Team Jota. Everything just worked. I completed a 30 minutes race and the game looks great. The racing feels pretty good by default, however I will of course need to tinker with the settings to my liking. Those 30 minutes just flew by and I had a really good time. Since that first race I've put in about 10 more hours of racing, so let's dive a little deeper into my thoughts about the game, starting with its content, which isn't all that much, but one can't criticize the game too harshly for this, as it is a licensed WEC product. The problem is that the WEC doesn't feature all that many tracks or different cars, at least for the 2023 season. We have Monza, Spa, La Sarthe, Sebring, Bahrain, Algarve and Fuji available to race on. They all look very realistic and are likely some of the most accurate representation of these tracks right now. Looking at the cars, we have Toyota, Ferrari, Porsche, Cadillac, Peugeot, Glickenhaus and Vanwall in the top category. And then we have the LMP2 class, which is just the same car but with a gazillion different liveries. In the GTE category we have the Aston Martin, Porsche, Ferrari and Corvette, so the content is somewhat limited, but DLCs are on the horizon, and the good thing about that is that every season will bring new content in the form of tracks and teams joining the WEC. The downside is that content will arrive slowly and add to the overall cost. We'll discuss paid DLC later. However, the quality of the content that's currently available is really good, and this shouldn't surprise anyone familiar with Studio 397's work. I've tried all the tracks and most of the cars, and they have all been both very visually appealing and fun to drive. Where I feel the game is severely lacking is in its limited game modes. Co-op and online play are cool, and I think many people will enjoy them, and these modes will be enough for them. However, I'm more of a single player guy, and these days I mostly enjoy playing with myself. That doesn't sound quite right. Anyway, an option to play through the entire season would add a lot to the experience in my opinion, and shouldn't be rocket science. A proper career mode would be even cooler, though this is hard to expect from an early access build, and sadly I don't think a career mode will ever happen, but we'll have to see. So the cars look nice and are fun to drive, but how do they handle? And just like rFactor 2, Le Mans Ultimate features one of the better physics and handling models in the business right now. Many of the gripes I've had with rFactor 2 don't seem to be an issue for me in Le Mans Ultimate, so they seem to have updated the engine for this title, though they may have updated rFactor 2 as well since last I played. It's been a while. The driving feel is nice, and I was surprised by the sense of speed, probably since I hadn't driven any sims in a while. This of course became slightly problematic when the AI got involved. Although the AI seemed pretty decent, they did seem to make contact a lot, and not just with me involved, but also among themselves. More than I would expect, actually. AI crash happened frequently during my race weekends. It's not a big issue, and sometimes even quite funny, but the frequency of incidents and crashes felt somewhat unrealistic. Making changes to the aggression of the AI may fix it though, I don't know. But yeah, overall the AI is pretty good. The game is visually impressive, as expected from a title released in 2024. Both the tracks and cars look beautiful, and the game is a joy to look at overall. The sound design is also amazing, and the tracks really come to life when the engine starts roaring. However, I had some issues where sound suddenly became extremely loud for a second or two, which startled me. It didn't happen often, but it was very annoying when it did. Not a huge issue, but I do wish it would go away. And moving on to the technical side of things, the game's performance was good. Frames were stable and everything mostly ran smoothly. As I mentioned before, I had a total freeze in the settings menu, and I also experienced some strange issues in the menus before a race start. Well, there was a significant delay on actions. For example, when I wanted to change the tires, there was a minimum delay of like 30 seconds from when I clicked to when the tire menu actually appeared, which was extremely annoying. However, once I started the race, the game ran smoothly again. Loading into races is really slow, which is a problem I'm very familiar with from rFactor 2. I'm running Le Mans Ultimate from an SSD, so it seemed they can't figure out loading times yet. There are definitely some issues within the game, but some problems are to be expected with an early access game. And with that, I think I'll summarize my first 10-ish hours of play. As I've speculated before, the game is pretty good, but there is a lack of content, especially for offline play. There are some issues with the stability of the application and some bugs, but all in all, I've had a good time with Le Mans Ultimate during my initial hours. I do think the full price is a bit steep for what content you get, especially in an early access stage, which usually has a reduced price for people to get into it. With the game being in an early access, I find it very hard to recommend it fully. However, if you're interested in a WEC sim racing title and want to support the developers and follow its development, you'll probably have a good time with this game. If not, I can't really recommend it just yet. So let's move on to some of the external factors that I mentioned before. The most common controversy is of course the paid DLCs that are available even before the game is out of early access. There's already a season pass and individual packs of new content to buy from the 2024 season, which many are questioning, and I would assume that these are contractual obligations, that they need to feature the cars from the current season in some way. And I don't necessarily have a problem with paid DLCs, but pushing it before the game reaches a finished 1.0 version is something I don't particularly like. I also don't appreciate when games become DLC simulators, where the DLC list is longer than the Nordschleife, and this is bound to happen if the game continues being developed. Additionally, what worries me a little is the licensing of all the cars and tracks that appear now or in the future. Will they be taken away from us if they don't feature in the WEC for a couple of years? I just don't know, but I would hate to have content be taken away from me. Lastly, there are the cash flow problems within motorsport games. people were laid off last year, and now we have reports of another round of layoffs if recent articles are to be believed. This could impact the development of LMU in the long term, which is concerning. But yeah, as a last conclusion, Le Mans Ultimate is a very good start to an interesting title, but due to its early access state, price, and lack of single player content, I do struggle to recommend it for anyone other than WEC fanatics. But with that said, I think I'm done. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.